Hello and welcome to Eye on Africa. I'm Yenna Lee. Your top stories on the continent tonight. On day one of a corruption trial in Mozambique, South Africa promises to extradite a prominent suspect. The so-called hidden debt scandal pushed the country towards an economic crisis. Misinformation and confusion hinder the COVID-19 vaccine rollout in South Africa. This as health workers battle a deadly third wave of the virus. And Tunisian rights activists and opposition parties pressed the president for a roadmap out of the political crisis. Kais Saied suspended parliament and fired the prime minister last month. Now let's start the show with the latest legal developments on Mozambique's so-called hidden debt scandal. South Africa says it'll extradite Mozambique's former finance minister Manuel Chang to his home country, where he's likely to face charges alongside 19 other people who are already on trial. Monday was the first day of hearings for them. The group is accused of money laundering, embezzlement, blackmail, and more. Ex-President Armando Guebuza's son is among them. This corruption scandal reportedly involved a tuna company, $2 billion of loans, and, of course, dire consequences for the population of Mozambique. Regional correspondent Ntshepeng Motema breaks it down for us.
Back in 2013, 2014, Mozambique had discovered large offshore gas deposits. And so politicians looking to cash in, who were highly connected to the government, set up three companies. These companies would take out loans from international lenders, including a Russian bank. And the government was going to be guarantor for these loans so that when these three companies that had been established don't pay those loans, that the Mozambican government would pay those loans back. The first red flags was that all of this did not go through Parliament as per usual, and Parliament did not sign off on it. And so in 2016, when this scandal came out, because the money that had been paid out for these loans was supposedly going to develop the country's maritime industry, but it actually went into the pockets of these people who are connected so highly to the government. And so when this came out in 2016, the IMF, which had been given developmental loans to Mozambique, withdrew those loans, which tanked the economy in the country because there was no development that was continuing. And many Mozambicans, millions of Mozambicans, went further into poverty who were relying on these developmental loans from the IMF.
And Ntshepeng, the trial of the 19 kicked off today in Mozambique. How's that been going?
The trial is massive. It's huge. In fact, there is no court in the country, we understand, that could even host the proceedings. And so there is a makeshift tent in one of the prisons near the capital, which is where all of this is taking place. And many people are going to be, giving testimony, as you said, including the former president's son. But a lot of people are asking, is the former finance minister, the man who signed off on this deal, is he going to stand trial? We are not sure. He is going to be extradited from here in South Africa. Activists are worried that he might not actually face the full might of the law because, of his connections to the government. They were hoping that he could stand trial in another country like the US, for instance, which is also involved in this case. I won't get into that. And they were hoping if that had happened, the extent of this corruption and how high up it went would have been laid bare, and Mozambicans would have known why they are suffering, who benefited.
Next to Rwanda, where Paul Rusesabagina's Belgian lawyer has been kicked out of the country for working without proper authorization. Rusesabagina is an ex-hotelier who was portrayed as a hero in a Hollywood film about the Rwandan genocide. He later lived in exile and founded an opposition group that has an armed wing. Today, the 66-year-old faces 9 counts of terrorism. He denies the charges and accuses the current government of kidnapping him. As the conflict between Ethiopia's federal forces and the Tigray People's Liberation Front continues, the US is upping its rhetoric against neighboring Eritrea. Washington slapped sanctions on the chief of staff of Eritrea's defense forces, accusing him of massacres, widespread sexual assault, and other human rights abuses. The US has long been calling for Asmara to retract its troops from the conflict. South Africa is in the midst of a third wave of COVID-19. With more than 10,000 new cases a day, it's become a race against time to inoculate the population. Last Friday, authorities opened up vaccines to all adults. Some 1 in 6 South Africans have now received a dose, but vaccine hesitancy too is a growing threat, as our correspondent Nadine Theron explains.
Due to a low vaccination rate in people over 35, South Africa on Friday opened up vaccination centres to the age group of 18 years and over, earlier than expected. Authorities fear the harm anti-vaccine activists are causing by spreading misinformation. On Saturday, protesters opposing mandatory inoculations gathered outside Cape Town's Groote Schuur Hospital. Although getting vaccinated is still a personal choice in South Africa, some believe this will soon change.
We disagree with this vaccine, why they should force people for having this vaccine, which is most of the people who had COVID survived from it.
Never before in history has illness been measured in terms of cases. A case means nothing. Most of those people don't have symptoms and never get sick.
The whole scamdemic is a vaccine marketing exercise.
Protesters were confronted by a senior anesthesiologist who treats COVID-19 patients in the hospital, and a scuffle ensued. Following the incident, the hospital released a statement calling the attack humiliating, demoralizing and disrespectful.
The hospital's board also criticised the protesters' lack of respect for healthcare staff who died on the front line of COVID-19.
Although misinformation is hindering the vaccination campaign, studies show that about 70% of South Africans are willing to get the jab. One study indicated that white adults are the most hesitant to get vaccinated.
To Niger next, where at least 19 people died in a suspected jihadist attack. The country's interior ministry added that assailants targeted villagers as they were finishing up their Friday prayers. The attack took place in Tillaberi. Last month alone, more than 100 people were killed in this region of western Niger. Nicolas Jama has more.
After the attack by suspected jihadists, the villagers of Ansuru in western Niger gathered for prayers. The gunmen had parked their motorbikes quite far from the village and arrived by foot.
Tous les jours que Dieu fait, c'est des morts. Les derniers qu'on a enregistrés, c'est hier, dans la commune rurale d'Anzuru. Dans une mosquée, les bandits ont trouvé les musulmans. Les musulmans, oui, dans la mosquée, ils ont ouvert le feu.
The Tillaberi region has been badly hit recently. Within a month, 98 civilians and 19 police officers have been killed. Lawmakers describe a critical socio-economic context.
92% des 409 écoles fermées au Niger pour cause d'insécurité sont dans la région de Tillaberi. L'économie tourne au ralenti, entraînant de facto le départ en exode des bras valides, le chômage des jeunes et leur enrôlement par les terroristes.
In May, a series of attacks forced more than 11,000 villagers to flee their homes. Jihadist groups operating in the area are usually affiliated either to Al-Qaeda or to the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara.
It's been nearly 1 month since Tunisia's President Kais Saied suspended parliament, invoking exceptional measures he claims to be part of his constitutional authority. Slammed by critics as a coup, the shutdown was to last 1 month, but could be renewed for another 30 days. As that deadline nears, many are uncertain over what comes next. Cole Stangler has the story.
Late last month, a bombshell declaration from Tunisia's president, arguing the constitution gives him exceptional authority when national security is under threat. Kais Saied dismissed the prime minister and announced a suspension of parliament for 1 month.
I'm taking responsibility. I'm taking a historical responsibility. Those who claim this is a coup d'etat need to review their legal studies.
The move left the country's top political parties aghast and was criticized by human rights NGOs. But others took to the streets in celebration.
It's the first time in my life that I've seen a president make a good decision. We've taken back our country, and I owed it to myself to come out and celebrate.
1 month later, Tunisia remains at a political impasse. The 30-day suspension of parliament is nearing its end, and the president has yet to name a new government or reveal a political roadmap as parties have demanded. On the other hand, Sayed has embarked on what supporters paint as an anti-corruption crackdown, putting several judges, legislators, and businessmen on house arrest or banning them from traveling abroad.
This money, hidden by these people, and I have a list of names, needs to return to the Tunisian people.
Sayed is expected to address the nation in the coming days, though the state of political limbo could go on for much longer.
Today's show was produced by Tatiana Reiter and her team behind the cameras. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to France 24.
France 24, your economy explained.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.
Versailles, Mont Saint-Michel, the Louvre are well-known stars of French heritage. But French genius and France harbors many other hidden treasures. The arts, gastronomy, architecture, as well as nature's wonders. Come along with France 24. Discover France's living heritage. From young apprentices to accomplished craftsmen and farmers, to Michelin star sporting chefs, meet these people whose passion for their professions preserve and drive French heritage.
You are here on France 24 and France24.com.